There's a plant that makes a poison to kill insects. It works. The poison jams the nervous system of anything small enough to chew the leaf, and the insect dies twitching in the sun. You already know this poison. You may have paid money for it. It is nicotine, and it is one of the most effective insecticides on Earth. So here's a question you have never had a reason to ask. Why does your brain treat an insecticide as a reward? The short answer is a word you already expected: evolution. But that word on its own explains nothing. It is the name of the problem, not the solution, because evolution is exactly what makes this impossible. A plant toxin is built to punish the animal that eats it. Your reward system is built to encourage the things that keep you alive. These two machines should never connect. And yet they do every day in millions of people reaching for the thing that was designed to hurt them. Hold on to that. We are going to take it apart in 3 steps. The first one starts in a tree. Long before anyone brewed anything, before fire, before words, your ancestors were apes eating fruit, and ripe fruit has a quiet chemistry. When sugar sits in warm air, wild yeast finds it, and the yeast turns that sugar into alcohol. So every piece of ripe fruit in the forest carried a faint trace of ethanol, usually 1 or 2%, no more. The biologist Robert Dudley calls this the drunken monkey hypothesis. Ethanol, he points out, has a smell that travels. It drifts through the trees on the air. To a hungry ape, that smell was not a warning. It was a map, a long-distance signal pointing straight at the ripest, most calorie-rich fruit around. The animals that liked that smell ate well. The ones that liked it a little too much ate best of all, and then something inside the body changed. In 2014, a team led by Matthew Carrigan did something strange and wonderful. They resurrected dead enzymes. They reconstructed a digestive enzyme called ADH4 from points across 70 million years of primate history, and they tested each version to see how well it broke down alcohol. For most of that history, the enzyme was weak. Then, around 10 million years ago, a single mutation, 1 letter in 1 gene, made it roughly 40 times better at metabolizing ethanol, 40 times from 1 change. ADH4 is the very first enzyme that meets alcohol in your mouth, your throat, your stomach. And right at the moment it upgraded, the great apes were climbing down out of the trees on the ground. The fruit was different. Fallen fruit sits. Fallen fruit ferments. An ape that could stomach the overripe, half-rotten fruit on the forest floor, the fruit with more alcohol in it, could eat food that everyone else had to leave behind. So the taste was not a mistake. It was an advantage. And we know this pattern is ancient because it shows up somewhere else entirely. On Madagascar, there's a strange primate called the ii, which feeds on palm nectar, and it carries the very same mutation. Evolved all on its own, offered different strengths of alcohol in an experiment, the ii reached for the strongest one every time. So here's the first piece of the answer. You did not invent drinking. You inherited the taste for it from an ape eating rotten fruit off the ground 10 million years before the first cup was ever poured. But a taste for weak alcohol in fruit is a long way from the rest of it. Fruit was food, nicotine is not food. Nicotine is a weapon. So the paradox is still standing, and it is about to get worse. You may have heard a famous version of this story, the idea that mushrooms rewired the ape brain and switched on human consciousness, that we owe our minds to a psychedelic. It is a beautiful story. There is no fossil, no site, no residue. Not one piece of physical evidence that early humans ate those mushrooms at all, and the science it leaned on was misread. The original study found the drug changed perception. It did not improve it, and the researchers thought the change might make you less likely to survive, not more. So set that story down. The real answer is stranger and much older, and it does not need a miracle because the real question is darker. If these things are poison, and if part of your brain knows they are poison, then why did we not stop? Why did our ancestors keep coming back? Why did we build rituals and cities and whole civilizations on top of the very thing that hurts us? To answer that, you have to understand the accident at the center of all of this. And it really is an accident. Scientists even have a name for it. They call it the paradox of drug reward, and it was laid out clearly by the anthropologists Roger Sullivan and Edward Hagen. It goes like this: your biology says drugs are rewarding. That is why people seek them out. Plant biology says these same compounds are neurotoxins evolved for one purpose: to punish and sicken the animals that eat the plant. Both of those things are true. Both of them cannot be true. A plant should never evolve a chemical that rewards being eaten. A brain should never evolve a reward for swallowing poison. And yet, here we are. Here's how the two impossible things met. When plants were evolving their chemical weapons, they were not firing at random. The most devastating way to sabotage an animal is to attack its nervous system. And a nervous system runs on specific molecules, neurotransmitters, the chemical words your neurons use to speak to one another. So the plants over millions of years evolved toxins shaped like those exact molecules, close enough to fit. The nicotine in tobacco is shaped like a signal your own nerves already use. The caffeine, the morphine, all of them. Each one is a counterfeit key, cut to slide into a lock inside an animal's brain and jam it. Your reward system is a lock, and the plant was born holding a key it never meant to cut. At a high dose, that key does exactly what the plant intended. It disrupts, it sickens, it can freeze the muscles a small animal needs to move. But at a low dose, something else happens. At a low dose, the key turns just far enough to trip the reward. The pleasure was never the point. It is a side effect, a splinter of a weapon that happened to fit your brain in a way that feels good. And your brain does still fight it. The nausea, the dizziness, the headache. That is the ancient alarm still going off. It is telling you the truth. It simply loses to the pleasure. That is the whole paradox resolved. You were never built to want poison. You were built to want food and safety, and poison learned to wear their face. Which brings us back to the darker question. If the alarm is still ringing, why did we lean in? Look at what people actually did. In a cave in Israel called Rakafet, archaeologists led by Li Lu found stone mortars with a residue dried inside them. The residue was beer. It was brewed about 13,000 years ago by hunter-gatherers, thousands of years before anyone farmed a field of grain, the oldest man-made alcohol we have ever found. And here's the detail that matters. The cave was a burial ground. This beer was not an everyday meal. It was made for a feast to honor the dead. Some researchers now argue something genuinely startling, that the hunger to make beer may have been part of why we started farming grain in the first place. Not bread first, beer first, it is still debated, honestly. But the mortars are real. At Göbekli Tepe, the great stone temple raised before farming even began, there are giant carved basins and faint chemical traces that only hint at fermented grain. Hunter-gatherers gathering to build something enormous, and maybe to drink, and then go to the other side of the planet. In the Utah desert, at a site called Wishbone, archaeologists found 4 tiny charred tobacco seeds in an ancient hearth, 12,300 years old. People had reached the Americas only a few thousand years before, and almost the moment they arrived, they found the tobacco plant and used it. 2 hemispheres. No contact, no shared language, no shared road. The same era right at the edge of the Ice Age, and the same exact behavior. Reaching for the plant that alters the mind. That is not a coincidence you can wave away. That is something buried deep in the species. So which is it? Is this a bug, a flaw, a glitch our ancestors were simply stuck with? Or is it a feature, something that was somehow useful? The psychologist Ronald Siegel went so far as to call the pursuit of intoxication a 4th drive, sitting right beside hunger, thirst, and sex that may reach too far. And plenty of scientists think it does. But it points at a real puzzle. The scholar Edward Slingerland sharpens that puzzle to a point. If alcohol were purely a thief, just picking the lock of a reward system meant for other things, then evolution had 10 million years to change the lock. To make us hate the taste, it never did. And when evolution keeps something that costly for that long, it is worth asking what it was buying. His answer lives in a single part of your brain. The prefrontal cortex, the front of your mind, the part that plans, that controls, that keeps your guard up and helps you lie. Alcohol quiets it, and a quieted guard is easier to trust. Think about what it takes for 2 suspicious, tribal, heavily armed strangers to lower their weapons and cooperate. Drinking together does it. When both people dim the part of the brain that schemes and hides, you get a kind of mutual disarmament, a chemical handshake that says, look, I'm not hiding anything. In Wine Truth, that same loosening lets ideas collide in stranger ways, which is why so much creativity and so many bargains and so many treaties happened over a shared cup. Alcohol, for all its damage, tended to win out over the stronger, wilder drugs because a hangover is a price you can pay and still show up the next morning. And that, finally, is where it turns on you. For almost this entire story, the dose was small and the setting was safe. Weak beer, watery wine, 1 or 2% shared out in the open at a feast with the whole village watching how you behaved. The poison was real, but it was leashed by weakness, by company, by ceremony. Then we changed one thing. We learned to distill. We learned to concentrate the poison, to strip away the water and the fiber and the ritual, and to sell it by the bottle to a person sitting completely alone. A couple of bottles of vodka hold as much ethanol as a whole cartload of the beer your ancestors drank. The same molecule, a different world, nothing changed inside your brain. Everything changed in the dose and in whether anyone was still watching. So the next time you reach for the thing you know you shouldn't, the drink, the cigarette, the small quiet betrayal of yourself, try to remember what it actually is. It is not weakness. It is not some flaw in you. It is a 10-million-year-old taste, meeting a key that was cut to hurt something else, arriving at a dose the world was never built to hand you. The plant made a poison to punish the things that ate it. You were simply never meant to get this much, and your brain, faithful and ancient, still calls it a reward.